To all our veterans participating, I hope that today will equip you with the knowledge and resources you need to enroll in these new benefits under the Honoring Our PACT Act law. And to everyone tuning into live stream or Facebook, I'm so excited to have you here with us today as well. So if you're tuning in from home and want to learn more about the PACT Act, you can visit ruiz.gov, ruiz.house.gov/PACT. Let me repeat that, ruiz.house.gov/PACT, or call my office at 760-424-8888. And to everyone participating in the webinar via Zoom or Facebook, remember that we will have a question and answer session at the end of the program to follow up with our experts. And if you have questions throughout the program, please use the comment button on Facebook or the Q&A feature on Zoom to send us your question. And just note that this is the first time we're doing Veterans University with this type of technology. So there may be some delays, some glitches. Bear with us. This is going live. So we're just going to roll with everything that comes our way. So, and when you do make those questions, it's important that you include your first and last name and the city that you reside in, then the question, and then if you're directing it to one of the speakers, put their name down as well. So now, before we begin the rest of the program, I always like to begin Veterans University with a moment of silence to honor the veterans and service members who made the ultimate sacrifice to protect our nation. This year, I especially want to recognize the sacrifice and legacy of 3 local heroes. Corporal Hunter Lopez, who gave his life in service of our nation on August 26, 2021. Cy Kaplan, a giant in our community who worked tirelessly to improve the lives of his fellow veterans. And Jennifer Kepner, a veteran whose service, vision, and relentless advocacy made today possible. Their 3 stories are shining examples of what it truly means to live your life with a greater purpose. As we continue with today's program, let us contemplate their heroism and service to our nation. And now I ask you to join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. I'd now like to welcome our very own all-star Indio VFW Post 3699 for the presentation of the colors. If you are able, please rise.
We're going. Attention. Forward, march. Face. Post colors. Salute. 2. Face. Forward, march.
Thank you. And now I invite my friend Bill Young from the Veterans Easy Access Program to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good morning, I'm Bill Young. If you can remain standing, please do, and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may sit.
Thank you, Bill. Bill will be joining us later in the program for a brief presentation on local veteran service. All of you can sit down now. So now, our first speaker is going to be Secretary Denis McDonough. Then we're going to have Karandeep Sraon from the Medical Center Director, VA Loma Linda Hospital. Ramonita Cruz-Young, who is a veteran representative from the Riverside County Veteran Services. Tom Porter, Executive Director, Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, and Rosie Torres, Executive Director, Burn Pits 360, and then back to Bill Young, Major U.S. Air Force, Retired Veterans Easy Access Program, or what we know here, V. So without further ado, let's dive into the program. I'm so excited to be joined by a very special guest to help us get started, my friend, Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs, Denis McDonough. Since day one, Secretary McDonough has been a staunch advocate of getting toxic exposed veterans the care they need. He has also been an incredible champion of our local veterans here in Riverside County, and in fact, throughout the whole country. I know many of you were at our Veterans Roundtable with the Secretary and the House Veterans Affairs Committee Chairman Mark Takano in March, when we talked about the need to pass this very bill. Now, 6 months later, we're seeing this law implemented, getting veterans in our communities the care they need. So I'll now turn it over to Secretary McDonough to talk a little bit about how the VA is doing just that.
Dr. Ruiz, thank you very much. It's great to be with you. Let me just do a quick signals check. You read me okay? Good, great. Listen, thanks to the stories, the advocacy and the voices of the veterans, they're in the room with you at the Veterans University and online. And thanks to the unrelenting determination and persistence of you, Dr. Ruiz, and of people like Chairman Mark Takano, the PACT Act did, as you say, make it to the president's desk, and I can't thank all of you enough. The bill, now law, will deliver care and benefits to millions of toxic exposed veterans. Listen, as so many of you know firsthand, that while vets were fighting for us, many were breathing toxic fumes from burn pits and from other sources. And then months or even years later, developed conditions that followed them home from war that impacted your lives, and in some cases took the lives of those you served with and loved long after the guns of war fell silent. So now it's our job to provide you, your families, our veteran survivors with benefits and care for those conditions. It's a monumental moment for VA, and most importantly for those we serve. Because with this new law, VA recognizes more than 20 new presumptives of service connection for toxic exposed, toxic related conditions. So vets living with those conditions will get the care and the benefits they've earned and that they deserve. We'll bring several new generations of new veterans into VA healthcare and increase benefits for many more. And that will result in better outcomes, better health outcomes, better quality of life across the board. We'll deliver benefits to more survivors of vets who passed away from toxic exposure, and we'll invest in our workforce and in our infrastructure to deliver those additional services, modernizing 31 more VA healthcare facilities across the country. All told, this is one of the biggest expansions of VA benefits and care in its history. So I'd ask you to share the following messages with any veteran, family member, or survivor you know. First, we at VA want veterans and survivors to apply for their PACT Act benefits right now. Right now. August 11th, the day after the PACT Act was signed into law, was our all-time high for online disability compensation claims being filed. And we need to continue to build on that momentum, keep breaking records for veterans. Second, I want to be very clear on this second point because it's an important one. The conditions in the PACT Act could take effect over the next few years. But at the president's direction, we're not going to do that. The president believes, Dr. Ruiz believes, Chairman Takano believes that veterans have waited too long for this care as it is, and we're not going to make them wait any longer. So instead of phasing in the conditions over the coming years, we're making all conditions outlined in the PACT Act presumptive as of August 10th, as of the day the president signed the law. And VA will begin processing PACT Act benefits on January 1, which is the earliest date we could possibly do so. Third, any veteran, family member, or survivor can learn more about the PACT Act by visiting VA.gov/PACT or calling 1-800-MY-VA-411. That's VA.gov/PACT and 1-800-MY-VA-411. That's 1-800-698-2411. And implementing this bill has to be about you, the veteran. We want to be loud in the coming months about what we're doing and when we're doing it, because this is all about how it affects you, your survivor, and your families, and our veteran survivors. So that's what everybody needs to know about the PACT Act. You have a great opportunity now to hear from these experts, including our excellent Loma Linda Med Center Director. But we really need your help also in communicating now, once you learn all these facts today, to your fellow veterans, family members, survivors, because we want every veteran, every single veteran, to get the care they need and the benefits that they have earned, that they deserve, and we won't rest until they do. Dr. Ruiz, thank you again for your persistence on this, your perseverance on it. Thank you for your always being hospitable to me, including hosting me there back in March for a roundtable with your great vets. I look forward to the rest of the conversation. I won't be able to stay for all of it, as I think, as you know, but the good news is you have much smarter people, including our first-rate Loma Linda Med Center Director to help you work through this. So thanks again, Mr. Ruiz, back to you.
Thank you, Secretary. Thanks for all that you do for on behalf of our nation's veterans. You know, I have to tell this story. I always said it. I told you during the bill signing that we have had two game changers in the fight to get this legislation across the finish line and to give veterans who've been exposed to burn pits and other toxins the care they need. One of those game changers was the national attention that was brought to this by comedian Jon Stewart and advocate John Field. The other was you, Secretary McDonough, and the Biden administration, when they designated presumptive benefits for burn pits exposed to veterans suffering from sinusitis, rhinitis, and other conditions for ear, nose, and throat last year. Because of the Biden administration, and that action changed the debate from having to prove or from debating whether or not we recognize that burn pits caused harm to debating which illnesses they can cause. And that was a big game changer, because before that, it was like pulling teeth trying to show the previous administrations that the toxins in burn pits can cause human illnesses. And so once this administration recognized that, then it was how many illnesses can we put into the presumptive benefits list. And this bill, which is now law, does just that. So thank you again for your leadership and for your time this morning. So years ago, Veterans University was born of our community's devotion to serving our veterans. It was part of a series of community forums where our veterans and their families talked about wanting to educate themselves more on how to best serve other veterans. And it was through that Veterans Initiative back, I believe in 2013, 2014, as soon as I became a congressman, that helped fuel and gave birth to this idea of a Veterans University. It's a principle based on the notion that together we can empower ourselves, our veterans in our families, veterans in our communities, in our work site. And it is my hope that today each one of us leaves with the power to demonstrate with actions, not just words, our gratitude to the men and women who serve our nation. And I can think of no better way to honor the life and legacy of Jennifer Kettner, who dreamed of a future where veterans who suffered from their exposure to burn pits and their families could receive the care and benefits they need. Then to empower our local veterans with the resources they need to access their earned care and benefits under the PACT Act. Since I met Jennifer 5 years ago, she has been my constant inspiration in this fight. She was an Air Force medic, veteran, wife, and mother of 2 young children who courageously served our nation at Balad Air Force Base in Iraq. There, like so many countless veterans, she breathed in toxic fumes from burning jet fuel, trash, and waste in massive burn pits surrounding her base every single day. And I know that there's veterans out there who are shaking their head, yes, because they experienced the soot in their face, the burning in their nostrils and their throat, breathing in this toxic fumes day after day. And by the time I met Jennifer, she was battling pancreatic cancer caused by her exposure to these toxic fumes. And she had no risk factors, no family risk factors, no other exposures. And she went to the VA and said that her physician said that the most probable cause of her pancreatic cancer was her exposure to breathing in the toxins from these burn pits. And despite that, she faced roadblocks to getting the benefits and the care she needed from the VA. And I know that a lot of veterans out there are shaking your head saying, yes, that was your story as well. Jennifer asked me at that kitchen table talk in her home to fight for veterans like her who had been exposed to burn pits, to make sure that other veterans don't go through what she went through. That was one of her 2 final wishes. 1 is to help take care of other veterans, and 2, to help her family get the benefits so that her husband, Ben Kettner, as a widow, would get more assistance to take care of her children. And she called the burn pits the Agent Orange of our generation. And I promised her that I would help, that I would lead this fight for our veterans who have been exposed to burn pits. And now it is because of her and her vision for her fellow veterans that we are here today educating you about the PACT Act law. It is because of her sacrifice and her relentless advocacy that the Honoring Our PACT Act is now law, ensuring that veterans can get the care they need from the VA and that families like the Kettners are taken care of. In Jennifer's memory, I founded the bipartisan bicameral Congressional Burn Pits Caucus, and I worked hard to secure the benefits and care she fought for her fellow veterans. And with her vision in mind, I developed a 4-pronged approach to the public health crisis she and other veterans battled. And I'm going to lay these out because it's important to know that this fight is not over, that we celebrate the most expansive access to healthcare in our generation, but there's still work to do. So the plan involves four pillars or 4 big steps. 1 is care. So we need to take care of our veterans and their families with medical care and disability benefits. 2 is education. Educating doctors and veterans on the health effects of burn pit exposure to identify risks and early symptoms in order to take care of the problem and potentially save a life or prevent severe illness. 3, research. We need to continue to do the research that's needed to fully understand the scope of danger associated with burn pits and other toxic exposures. And then finally, 4, end the use of burn pits once and for all. So let's go back. Care. With my legislations, the Presumptive Benefits for Warfighters Exposed to Burn Pits and Other Toxins Act and the Jennifer Kebner Hope Act that were included, the Honoring Our PACT Act fulfills the first step of this plan. This new law includes my bipartisan bicameral legislation to give veterans the care they need by establishing a presumptive of service connection for over 23 categories or illnesses or cancers. Now, I say categories or illnesses because most people think that it's only 23 illnesses. But one of the categories, for example, is cancers of the reproductive tract. And we know that there's uterine cancers, ovarian cancers, testicular cancers. And so that counts as more than one because it's the whole tract. So there's more than 23 illnesses, and that's a pretty big deal. So that means that veterans will no longer have to face a cumbersome process to prove that the illnesses they're suffering from is a result of their exposure to burn pits and other toxins. It takes the burden of proof off of their shoulders and puts it on the VA. Later in the presentation, we'll walk you through the new efficient process to enroll in these benefits at the VA. So stay tuned, don't log out, stay with us because we're gonna get to the nitty-gritty and the how-to implement this bill and how you can get your health care and your benefits. The second pillar is education. The PACT Act ensures that VA personnel have the appropriate training and education to regularly screen veterans for toxic exposures. I heard too often that veterans would go to the VA and even service members in the Department of Defense, and the providers there were not familiar with the different illnesses that burn pits can cause, often dismissing them as either making excuses because they wanted to leave their service or they were just making things up and because they wanted extra benefits. They were wrong. The veterans and their service members were right all along. And now this PACT Act will help educate those providers and those workers about the ill effects of burn pits exposures and the subtle symptoms that veterans can experience in order to early screen and provide the protections needed for our veterans. And as a physician, I know how crucial this is to the long-term effects, health effects of our veterans. And that is why I've pushed legislation for years that would help VA personnel recognize the signs and symptoms of toxic exposures in our veterans. The Honoring Our PACT Act also requires the VA to establish an outreach program to our veterans so that they can learn about toxic exposures. So those subtle changes, when you're young and healthy and used to running 3 miles, 4 miles in the morning, and now you get winded when you walk up a flight of stairs, take those seriously because you're at higher risk of developing chronic bronchiolitis or other respiratory illnesses due to exposure to burn pits. And early treatment, early correct workup diagnostic tools will help you get the care that you need to prevent serious, severe illness. And so this will help veterans enroll, this outreach program will help veterans enroll in key programs at the VA to get the care they need. And again, later we'll talk about how you can enroll here locally in this district. And finally, the PACT Act will help us better understand the impact of toxic exposure by requiring the VA to conduct new studies on veterans' health trends so we can prevent a public health crisis like this in the future. In essence, these studies are not necessarily to go back and rehash the proof of whether carcinogens in burn pit toxic smokes cause cancer, because by definition, we know there's carcinogens and carcinogens cause cancer, but it is to fully understand the different types of cancers, the different types of illnesses that have not been included in the presumptive benefits so that we can pursue better treatments, early recognitions, and better care for our veterans. So That, all those three pillars were included in the Honoring Our PACT Act. One pillar was not, and that's what's next. The end of burn pits. This bipartisan law makes bold gains in getting our veterans the care they need. However, in order to prevent more service members from becoming delayed casualties of war, we must put an end to our military's use of burn pits for good. Right now, there are still 6 active burn pits being used at U.S. military bases around the world. That's unacceptable, and I'm laser focused on making sure those 6 burn pits are not used again. There are alternatives of waste disposals that we can utilize. Burning trash in open burn pits has been illegal in the United States since the 1970s due to its bad health consequences. If it's illegal in the US, it should be illegal and banned near Americans in foreign soil as well. And to right this wrong, I'm pushing legislation in this year's defense package to push our military to identify alternatives to burn pits so that we don't subject another generation of veterans to the pain and suffering caused by toxic exposures. Our Vietnam veterans know all too well about this very pain and suffering. And like Jennifer, their stories have fueled my fight to get the Honoring Our PACT Act signed into law. Under this bipartisan law, veterans who were exposed to contaminated water at Camp Lejeune will finally be able to file claims and have their cases heard in court. The law also adds 2 new presumptive conditions and 5 new sites to the list of presumptive locations for Agent Orange, including Laos, Cambodia, Guam, Atoll, and Thailand. So in short, this law will make a monumental change in the lives of millions of veterans. It is the most expansive access to care for veterans in generations. Over 3.5 million veterans and their families will be positively impacted. Their pain and suffering will be reduced because they will be able to receive health care, and their spouses and their families will be taken care of because they'll be receiving their benefits. And with that, let's get into how you can access these benefits. Before I introduce our next speaker, just a reminder that if you have questions on any of our experts' presentations, we will hold a Q&A once all of our speakers present. You can submit your questions using the Q&A feature via Zoom. So if you're utilizing Zoom, go to the Q&A feature or the comment feature on Facebook. Just to remember to include your first and last name and the city that you reside in, then your question. If you'd like to direct your question at one of your panelists specifically, please include their names as well. So it's now time to turn it over to Gary Woodward, Staff Director of the House Veterans Affairs Committee. So again, Gary Woodward is the Staff Director of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, who had a pivotal role in putting this piece of legislation together. Gary Woodward would present now. The floor is yours. Gary Woodward, thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. I appreciate you inviting me to be here with you today. Chairman Talcano sends his regards and asked me to thank you again for your leadership on helping to pull this bill together and across the finish line. As it has been alluded to, the bill is pretty wide ranging. So I'm going to talk at a high level about some of the major provisions, and then we can fill in the details as need be in the Q&A. But to talk just generally about the reasoning for the PACT Act, as has been mentioned before, it's the committee's attempt to address in a comprehensive way the legacy of toxic exposure among our veterans. And I say comprehensive, and not that in the sense that it addresses every potential condition, but that it also tries to address not just the healthcare and disability needs of those who are currently ill and disabled, but It also reforms the way in which VA addresses these issues into the future. And we also try to ensure that VA has the resources and infrastructure in place to serve these veterans better moving forward. So let me start by talking about the healthcare and disability expansions first. It's best to think of the PACT Act as expanding healthcare access in two different ways. The first is a presumption of exposure to certain toxins. That is, if you served in specific locations during specific periods of time, you are presumed to have been exposed to environmental hazards, and as such, you're given access to priority group 6 healthcare. That's principally done for the purposes of longitudinal monitoring. As I said, these are for veterans who are not currently ill. And hopefully in a slide in just future, you'll see the list of those locations and services. There we go. It's important to note that the healthcare access provided under this expansion is phased in over time based on discharge date. And again, I can get into this a little bit more in Q&A, but basically over the next 10 years, veterans are grouped into cohorts and based on your separation date, and would be granted access to VA's healthcare system in a phased in approach. The second way that the PACT Act expands access to healthcare and disability benefits, and this was the previous slide, was if veterans are currently ill with one of 23 new conditions or categories of illnesses. These are rare cancers and respiratory conditions. As Congressman Ruiz mentioned, he was pivotal in pulling this list together, and we thanked him for his leadership here. In the case that a veteran has one of these conditions or a precursor to one of these conditions and served in one of the locations mentioned earlier, they are given access not just to the VA healthcare system, but also to the VA disability benefits. As the Secretary mentioned, it was intended that these conditions would be phased in similar to the healthcare access above, but the President and his leadership, the Secretary and his leadership have sought fit to implement these presumptive conditions date of enactment, basically August 10th. So as was mentioned, we are encouraging veterans to apply now. VA will begin processing those claims in January, but any disability compensation that's awarded based on these presumptions would be backdated to that August 10th date. And I will mention also that survivors benefits are also eligible in the event that the veterans themselves has since passed or succumbed to one of these illnesses. There are also two additional categories of veterans that the bill addresses. The first is Vietnam era veterans. Congressman Ruiz mentioned this as well. It expands the definitions of who qualifies as a Vietnam era veteran by adding Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Guam, American Samoa, and Johnston Atoll to the list of locations where Agent Orange exposure is known to have occurred. And so those veterans, folks who served in those areas, will now be access to the full range of VA healthcare disability benefits based on the already established Agent Orange presumptions at the VA. But the bill does also add two new categories or two new presumptive illnesses related to Agent Orange exposure. The first is MGUS, and I will not try to pronounce the medical term there. I will stumble all over my tongue. And the second was hypertension. There are different effective dates for when these conditions are kicking in at VA. For MGUS, the effective date is October 1st of this year. For hypertension, the presumptive illness doesn't become effective until October 1st of 2026. The second additional category of veterans who are addressed in the PACT Act are those who would have been exposed to radiation in several locations. The first is Eniwetok Atoll, where they've done some atomic testing. And the second and third are Palomares, Spain, and Thule, Greenland, where there were some bomber crashes and they were carrying nuclear weapons, and the cleanup crews from those were exposed to radiation as a result of that. There are a couple other things that I would like to talk about. As I mentioned, the bill is a comprehensive one. It addresses the process of VA establishing new presumptives moving forward. And this was an important piece because in developing this legislation, one of the chief concerns we heard is that it takes too long. VA's process took too long, sometimes years or decades even, to create new presumptions. And so we've reformed this process to expedite the task of determining whether or not there's a service connection for new diseases by requiring the secretary to publish a list yearly of the conditions that they are considering, and upon publication of that list, to research and act and make a decision on those presumptions in an expedited time frame. We're talking a year or two as opposed to a decade or two. We've also changed the threshold that VA will be using to decide when a new presumptive is granted. In the past, there had to be essentially absolute certainty that the disease was indeed service connected. However, the threshold has been changed such that the new standard for decision making is that the disease is equally as likely as not to have been caused by an environmental exposure during service. So with that lowered threshold, hopefully there will be new things added more quickly. As the Congressman alluded to, we don't know what diseases may pop up in the future, and so we need a mechanism to address those new conditions more quickly. And then I will say also that we were cognizant of the need to provide VA with the resources to implement this wide-ranging bill. We are adding millions of people to the healthcare roles and disability roles there, and so the bill does invest in 31 new healthcare facilities around the country. And it also provides the authority for joint facilities with DoD. So if there's not a VA facility nearby, but there is a military base, a Guard or Reserve base, or active duty, VA can lease that facility from them so veterans can get care closer to where they are. But it also increases resources for VA's IT infrastructure so that they can process claims more quickly, conduct medical exams more quickly as well. And then it invests heavily in the recruitment and retention of the healthcare workforce, which I'm sure others will talk about later. And this is important, again, so that veterans can get timely exams when they are visiting the VA medical centers as a result of this bill. The last thing I will talk about is Camp Lejeune, as Congressman Ruiz alluded to, principally because we've noticed that there is some confusion about what the PACT Act did with relation to what has already been done at VA. I would just remind folks that in 2012, the Congress created 15 or designated 15 new presumptive illnesses related to exposure to toxic water at Camp Lejeune. Those presumptive illnesses gave veterans and their families, I should note, access to healthcare and disability based on their exposure to toxic water there at Camp Lejeune. So that's already existed. It has been for some time now. The PACT Act itself builds upon that and essentially allows those veterans and their families to sue for negligence, to sue the federal government for negligence related to that. I will say that VA has no role in processing those lawsuits. Those are lawsuits filed with a circuit court in North Carolina. But the healthcare and disability benefits side, again, granted in 2012, the VA does have a role, and so I encourage you to visit VA's websites and look into that. So with that, I will stop, and I look forward to any questions later in the presentation. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Gary. Gary, it's good to have you here, and thank you for sticking around and answering some of the Q&A from our viewers later in the program. I just really want to give a shout out to you, Gary, and to all the staff who work day in and day out with minimal rest. There's a lot of sleepless nights during this whole fight and process from the House Veterans Affairs Committee. You guys really work very hard under the amazing leadership of Chairman Mark Takano. And it's wonderful to have Chairman Mark Takano as a fellow representative in Riverside County, who, once I rejoined the VA committee, I said, Mark, you're going to be the chairman that's going to get this done. And he sure did. He fulfilled and exceeded all expectations. He brought the team together. He was relentless in this fight. Together, we made a good cop, bad cop kind of duo in committees. I was always seemed to be always the bad cop, raising voice in debate in our fights. But we got it done. And having said that, I also want to give thanks to all of the staff that's worked in my office throughout the years for this. In particular, I'm going to name a few all-stars. Patrick Keplinger, who's a Wounded Warrior Fellow, worked in my office, also exposed to burn pits, was there with me at Jennifer Kepner's deathbed with her family. Blake Weller, who's a Wounded Warrior Fellow, worked in my office, who was instrumental in getting this through. We have current Wounded Warrior Fellow Tony Rippin in my office. We have veterans Lucas Pignon and Michael Bailey. We have veterans who have worked in my office, Gino Sexton and others. And then my incredible staff, starting with Evelise Barroa, Silvia Ruelas, and now Alexandra Heller, who got this across the finish line. To everybody who's worked day in and day out on this, I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. So now our next speaker is Senior Veterans Representative Ramonita Cruz-Young from the Riverside County Department of Veterans Services. She's actually here, so she's going to come up to the podium. Ramonita served in the U.S. Marine Corps and can discuss the local services to help you navigate this new law. So we've given you the general overview of the law. Now we're getting into the local services and how to apply for these health cares and benefits.
Thank you, Congressman, for extending the invite to our department to participate in this event. If I may, I would just like to go over some department information before I get into the claims process. So like the Congressman said, my name is Ramonita Cruz-Young. I'm one of the senior veterans representatives for Riverside County Veterans Services. Our office provides benefits counseling to all veterans and surviving spouses and dependents. We assist with filing claims for disability, pension, assist survivors, sign up for survivors benefits, granted they meet the requirements that are set forth by the VA. We also assist veterans and dependents sign up for education benefits and health benefits. Additionally, we also provide resource information to other local, state, and federal agencies concerning benefits. All right, so now to get into the claims process with regards to the PACT Act, all claims will be processed the same way as any other claim, with the exception that since these conditions are presumptive, the requirement for the veteran to provide evidence of being exposed to these toxins is not required. The only two requirements that need to be met are the following. One, the veteran has to show that he or she is diagnosed with a condition from the presumptive list. And secondly, the veteran needs to provide evidence that he or she served at one of the locations listed on the PACT Act. Once that is established, we will earmark the claim to be reviewed under the PACT Act. The rest of the claim process with regards to CMP examinations will remain the same if the VA deems they are necessary. If a veteran was previously denied for any newly added presumptive conditions, our office can provide assistance with filing a supplemental claim to have the previously denied claim reopened and reviewed under the PACT Act. The same goes for any surviving spouses who were denied survivors benefits. The VA is supposed to be reaching out to these veterans and surviving spouses. However, I would encourage them to contact our office for assistance now rather than wait for the VA to contact them. We do anticipate a surge in claims, and we are prepared as well as we can be. However, I do want to inform the residents of Riverside County that we are understaffed, just like any other agency in business today. Right now, we have 7 VSRs, veteran service representatives, that can assist Riverside County veterans. These VSRs are nationally accredited as well as accredited through the state with California Department of Veterans Affairs. We are operating on an appointment basis only, so please call one of our offices to speak with a representative or make an appointment. If veterans prefer to file their claim online through VA.gov, please make sure to file it using the appropriate VA forms. For new claims, in other words, if the veteran has never filed for any of these presumptive conditions before, they will need to use Form 21-526EZ. To reopen a claim that was previously denied, the veteran would need to fill out or submit a form called VA Form 20-0995 and upload evidence supporting the claim. If veterans prefer printing out the forms and filling them out at home at their leisure, you can send the forms to our office for us to review, and then we can file them electronically through the VA form. Our services are free of charge. I do want to mention that there are agencies out there that charge veterans to file claims with the VA. This is highly illegal. They somehow find a loophole to charge a consulting fee. Please know that, like I said, all our services are free of charge. So know that you can contact one of our offices to get assistance for free. For any additional information regarding the PACT Act, the information can be accessed on the VA.gov website, which is VA.gov/PACT. And again, thank you, Congressman, for having us here today.
Thank you. Thank you. I see we have a few questions trickling in. So just remember, we'll go to those during the Q&A portion at the end of the program. In the meantime, you can continue to submit your questions using the Q&A feature on Zoom or the comment feature on Facebook. Don't forget to add your first and last name, city that you reside in, and direct your questions if you want to direct your questions to a specific speaker. So our next presenter is a very good friend of mine whose leadership helped get the PACT Act signed into law. Tom Porter is Executive Vice President of Government Affairs at the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. He is from San Bernardino, so he's a fellow Inland Empire, Southern Californian, and is a captain in the U.S. Navy Reserve with service since 1996, including deployments to Afghanistan and the Arabian Gulf as a public affairs officer. Tom will cover resources that IAVA offers to assist toxic exposed veterans. Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Congressman. Appreciate you having me on, and I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I hope to do that next time. Thank you, everybody, for being here. As he mentioned, I'm from right down the road in San Bernardino. I often help people from California, especially because it's where I'm from, if they want to come to Washington, D.C. to either work on Capitol Hill or get into veterans advocacy. So you can find me on LinkedIn if you want to connect. Happy to discuss any of those possibilities. You should know that I run the Washington, D.C. office, so our national advocacy efforts for IAVA. We are the largest veteran service organization for post 9/11 veterans. A little bit more of my background though before I go on is not only from San Bernardino, but I've got family nearby in Beaumont and Yucaipa and Riverside County. I'm also a member of the Lone Pine Paiute Shoshone tribe about 3 hours north of you in Lone Pine, California. So I spent a long time, 20 years before doing this, on Capitol Hill and at an energy lobbying firm working on California tribal energy, natural resource issues. So a long history of working on issues close to you. And then came into this job about 7 years ago after my last deployment because I wanted to be able to help veterans and military families. So this is really important to me. I thought it was going to be a temporary deal. Ended up staying 7 years and counting. We're getting a lot done. It's really rewarding. We have members of ours come out all the time in normal times where they will fly out to Washington, D.C., and we will meet with members of Congress and the committees that affect veterans and service members. And so if you're a member of IAVA, which you can be, you can join for free at IAVA.org. That's IAVA.org. If you're a veteran of any era, you don't have to have deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan, but any era veteran or their family members or supporters, again, join at IAVA.org. We focus on many issues of importance to the post 9/11 generation, especially including veteran and military suicide, veteran education benefits, defending the post 9/11 GI Bill from cuts and abuse. We have been engaged on behalf of women veterans since we're seeing an all-time high in terms of women being represented in our armed forces and our veteran community. Medicinal cannabis is something of interest to post 9/11 veterans and many other veterans too. So we're working towards legislation to that end. Military justice reform, including military sexual assault. So we're making reforms at the Pentagon as well. And then most recently, as you've heard, we worked closely with the other veterans organizations from around the country to pass the Honoring Our PACT Act, which, as you've heard already, is landmark legislation, the most significant ever passed for veterans healthcare that would deliver health and disability benefits for those that have suffered toxic exposures. And I won't go into that anymore because I'll be duplicative since everybody's talked about it in depth. So the Honoring Our PACT Act, I think what I could talk about is it was extremely unique in its campaign, and that that it utilized some main components. One of them is the professional advocates within the veterans organizations based in DC that are engaged on this and other veterans issues all the time with the committees and members of Congress. It had activists from around the country, veterans activists, including many local and regional veterans groups that came to town that you may have seen online, like Rosie Torres was leading the fight at the Capitol when veterans occupied the steps and stayed overnight for nights on end through rain and near 100-degree temperatures and wind and everything. So that was tough. Activists played a key role there. Media relations. We did an unprecedented push through media, from CNN to Fox News to local affiliates all over the country. And especially a huge amount was done via social media. You can see our hashtag mostly on Twitter, but also Facebook too, of PACT Act and Pass the PACT Act. You'll see so much of what we did throughout the campaign on Twitter. Lots of pictures, videos, and all of our congressional meetings. And then, of course, one component extremely important you may have seen throughout our campaign, John Stewart, who really is selfless, donated so much of his personal time and energy to come down for several years to walk the halls of Congress, to go on TV, to do media, to do rallies all over the country with veterans organizations. Really was key in our fight, along with the 9/11 first responders as well, who IAVA partnered with them on 2 previous occasions on their own toxic exposure fight. So this is not a new issue for them. We helped them pass into law critical legislation over the last 10 years, twice before the PACT Act. And so they came to fight on our side this time because we were on their side before. So that's the gist of the whole thing that I wanted to discuss. But again, if any of you veterans out there from Congressman Ruiz's district would like to know more about IAVA, again, go to IAVA.org and join for free. And I would be mistaken if I didn't recognize some very important people in this fight. Congressman Ruiz has been with us through the thick and the thin. meeting with us for several years now about on developing the legislation, but then also working hard, working the media, working his congressional colleagues. Chairman Mark Takano, who represents Riverside, the chairman of the VA committee. He was a hero of ours, getting this legislation passed, working with Speaker Pelosi, who was one of our strongest advocates in Congress. It really was the will of Speaker Pelosi and Chairman Takano and our friends in Congress, like Congressman Ruiz, that forced this to passage. That was all significant. And then I can't leave out Secretary McDonough, who is a staunch advocate of this bill and getting it passed, and the president himself. In the critical days, especially in the last few weeks of the campaign, staff from the White House, from Secretary McDonough's staff at the VA, Chairman Takano's staff at the committee were in contact with us sometimes daily to make sure that we had what we needed and offering however they could help, offering assistance however they could help. So just want to pass that on. Thank you, Congressman, for having me here. Thank you, everybody, for being here on the panel. I look forward to hearing from everybody else.
Thank you very much, Tom. I really appreciate you being here with all of us. And thank you for your incredible efforts throughout the years. Absolutely correct. This was a coalition. This was a movement that really started from widows and spouses and veterans who were 100% disabled. Some could barely speak because on 100% oxygen. Some, like Jennifer Kepner, really thin on chemotherapy and very weak, struggling with cancers of all forms. These are the heroes that we lift them up in the passage of this law. Absolutely correct. I also want to give a shout out to our Senate companions on this fight. We have Senator Gillibrand and Senator Marco Rubio. It was a bipartisan effort, so it still exists, bipartisanship. They were our counterparts with my bills, the presumptive benefits for warfighters exposed to burn pits and other toxins, and also Republican Representative Brian Fitzpatrick in the House, who introduced that bill with me and is also part of the Burn Pits Caucus with me. So this was truly a comprehensive approach for a comprehensive bill. Speaker Pelosi was relentless when she made up her mind and said this, and it didn't take long for her to do it. In fact, we had her at hello on this issue. She said in a meeting with Secretary McDonough and Chairman Takano, basically told the secretary to prepare himself because Congress is going to pass a law to get this done. And I'll never forget that conversation. So for all of our veterans participating, remember that if you have questions on any of our experts' presentation, we will hold a Q&A at the end. Don't forget to put your first and last name, the city that you reside in, your question, and you can direct it to any of the speakers that you want. So our next speaker is also a very dear friend of mine who is no stranger to Veterans University. In fact, she was the first advocate I met in this fight of a large organization. She first got me involved in this work and helped introduce me to Jennifer Kepner all those years ago. Rosie Torres and Leroy Torres, her husband, who is struggling to breathe due to his exposure to burn pits, is the founder of Burn Pits 360, a veteran service organization whose mission is to reintegrate, restore, and build resilience through facilitating the unmet needs of warriors and their families through outreach, advocacy, and research. She's been a fierce advocate for our nation's burn pit exposed veterans. And we certainly wouldn't have gotten the PACT Act signed into law without her. She has been there since the thick and thin of things. She is relentless in her pursuit for justice for veterans. She has enormous love for her husband, and she is a true game changer in all sense of the word, and I am so proud to call her a friend. And she also flew years ago to our Veterans University to have our very first workshop alongside Jennifer Kepner's widow, Ben Kepner, on burn pits. So Rosie, I'll let you take it from here to talk about how Burn Pits 360 can help our local veterans. And don't forget, for all of our viewership, since this is online, since this is on social media, this is also speaking to all the veterans throughout our nation. So Rosie, the floor is yours.
Congressman Ruiz, thank you so much for having me. And to all of your constituents, thank you for your continuous support. You, Congressman Ruiz, have been a leader in this space. And so we're so grateful to have worked alongside you and have led this effort. So a little bit about Burn Pits 360. We, in 2011, this all started with us establishing a national burn pit registry in an effort to address this generation's Agent Orange. And we led this effort for the past 13 years. It was really a unified front of, that was made up of really just those impacted by this issue, families, veterans, active duty, reservists, you name it. We all just met on this social media platform, Facebook, where we all had one thing in common, and it was that we were all facing this injustice. So we came together, created a website, and, lo and behold, here we are. On August, of course, 10, 2022, we made history, like Tom Porter just mentioned, with the passage of one of the most monumental pieces of legislation in the veteran space. I can say that we created this like uncharted territory, a very unique space alongside veteran-owned companies like Grunstyle, the veteran service organizations, the Big Six, the organizations that hold up the space there in Washington, members of Congress such as Congressman Ruiz, the media, the press, Jon Stewart, John Field, and this administration. So I feel like we really mobilized America, and we saw the fruits of our labor come to fruition on August 10th. And that has been such an honorable and amazing experience. And you're right, Congressman Ruiz, I did attend, and thank you for inviting us back in March of 2018 to educate the veteran community and their families, really. And that's the one event that we did, that we were able to connect with these veterans who had tons of questions and were just so clueless in trying to access that specialized healthcare, trying to file claims. And so, it goes back that far to where, everyone was just kind of scratching their heads wondering, like, where do we go from here? So for Burn Pits 360, it still continues to be, part of our mission is to, now that the PACT Act has passed and is been put into law, it will continue to be our mission to educate the veteran community through our own efforts of outreach and education. So what I will say about the PACT Act, I don't want to talk about the details of the bill, because I know that the staff at HVAC and SVAC and the VA, that is their forte. That is what they do, and I'd rather leave that to them. But my advice to the veterans watching right now is to visit any of the veteran service organizations, in addition to ours, burnpits360.org. Select the resources and information tab, and you'll be able to download different resources, such as like the VA Environmental Training Letter 10-03. You'll be able to download something called the Toxic Exposure Table. And with these resources and information, you'll be able to really do your part in educating your civilian and VA providers. That is crucial. It's key. This law was just passed, so it's going to take time for the VA to push out, right, the most impactful pieces of information, FAQ sheets, all the things that are going to help us along the way. But for now, do your part. You need to do your part and educate them, and in both the civilian private sector and in the VA and DoD, right? If you're part of those healthcare facilities and you access care there, educate them. And like I mentioned, I'm sure there's veterans organizations that have tons of of information that you can take to those individuals. So again, for us, our priority remains to educate the community. And it will be as well to make sure that oversight and implementation of the PACT Act is done correctly, and is done effectively. So for us, because we do operate a national burn pit registry, a toxic exposure registry, it'll allow us to continue to work closely with leaders like Congressman Ruiz, with the VA, with DOD in addressing your needs, the veterans. So we also know, and we will continue to push for screening and prevention and adding cancers and illnesses, and that will come with time. But please know that we'll continue to work hard on our end on behalf of Burn Pits 360 to make sure that all of those services are delivered to the survivors, to the veterans, to your families. I think, and just to touch a little bit about what Tom mentioned in regards to that historical moment on the steps, it was just an honor to be part of such a movement, Congressman, to have seen all of our work over these past 13 years finally come to light, and you know, really just seeing democracy at its best, sleeping on those steps in the rain, in the sun, you know, just really being with America and being alongside those veterans and their families was such an honor. So in closing, I will just add that, you know, to tell people a little bit more about Burn Pits 360 and what we do, in addition to the legislative efforts and the, you know, monumental piece of legislation that just passed, we also have launched something called the Warrior Hope Network, where we provide different healthcare modalities and resources, such as like in-home hyperbaric oxygen chambers, oxygen concentrators for those veterans that you know, can't get that through the VA or DOD. We actually provide the concentrator, you know, with their script and all that, so that they can, you know, be with their families or go on vacation, and they actually have a mechanism in which helps them, you know, breathe and still be independent. And in addition to that, you know, we provide resources to help veterans access toxic exposure lab panels to test their bodies for toxicity, stem cell treatments, and much, much more. So, you know, visit our website, go on our social media pages, and you can follow the work that we do. Again, it's been an honor to be part of this historic movement, and we're here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you so much. And one more reminder that we will take as many questions as we can during the Q&A portion of the program. First, last name, question, and direct to the person that you want. In the meantime, you can continue to submit them using the Q&A feature on Zoom, or the comment feature if you're tuning in on Facebook. So don't forget your name, first and last, city you reside in, and which panelists you would like to answer your question. So now I'd like to turn it over to Karandeep, Sraon, Medical Center Director at VA Loma Linda, who will give an overview of local news and resources for the veterans community. Karandeep, the floor is yours.
Hey, good morning, Congressman Ruiz. Thank you for including us in Veterans University. I couldn't agree with you more that it comes down to care, education, outreach, and research. So with the passing of the PACT Act, VA Loma Linda is preparing to expand the availability of primary care services. Our existing 5 community-based outpatient clinics in the healthcare system have been contracted for over 2 decades. And as many know, there was a change in management on October 1st of 2021, and we've been experiencing some growing pains. We know the angst and concern veterans assigned to the Palm Desert CBOC have regarding the new contractor. I can assure you that we've been working diligently with STGI to resolve all concerns. As the medical center director, my non-negotiable goal is to ensure our veterans receive the care they need when they need it and ensure the highest level of safety. Providing safe quality care is just non-negotiable. That being said, we've had to make a few difficult decisions regarding suspending assignment into the CBOC primary care panels and mobile packs, just to ensure that we are consistent with what the contractor can safely supply while fulfilling the requirements outlined in the Mission Act. It takes a bit of navigation. However, I am pleased to share that we met with the STGI executive team last week to review their updated staffing plans, and they have several new providers in the credentialing and privileging process. We're working very closely to get those clinical providers on board to expand appointment availability within the clinic. We want STGI to be able to enroll veterans for care at Palm Desert, but we're committed to ensuring that providers are operating within safe limits in terms of patient load. So if a team or a provider has too many patients, it creates an unsafe situation. And it's just a risk we don't want to accept when it comes to providing veterans the care they've earned and deserve. We are committed to quality and safety, even if it means offering veterans the choice of having a primary care provider at the ambulatory care center in Redlands, or the option to receive their care in the community with a non-VA doctor. If you need help navigating any part of this process, or you have an individual concern or an issue you need assistance with, please reach out to one of our patient advocates. I can tell you we track every single complaint that goes, or concern or issue that goes to the patient advocates to make sure that it's resolved. And they can be reached by phone at 909-583-6133. Again, that number is 909-583-6133. There's also an email address associated with our patient advocates that can help address concerns. And that email address is VHALOMVSS@VA.gov. Again, it's VHALOMVSS@VA.gov. If you have a referral for care in the community and need assistance with care coordination, you can reach a member of my team here in Loma Linda. And the number there is 909-307-5248. The number for care in the community again is 909-307-5248. One recurring frustration that's been voiced by veterans many times has been the inability to call directly into your CBOC. So currently, all calls are routed through the centralized scheduling center. We're going to be changing that model to meet veterans' expectations. We hear you. We're working on amending the contract to establish call centers specifically located at each CBOC to give veterans easier access to their primary care team. So veterans will be able to call directly into their clinic. Right now, the easiest way to communicate directly with your primary care team is to use My Healthy Vet and send a secure message. We track all secure messages to make sure that they are answered in a timely manner. If you need a medication refill, you can also do that via My Healthy Vet. You can also do it online at VA.gov, or you can call the main hospital line at 909-825-7084 and pressing option number 1. The PACT Act has given us flexibility at our VA Medical Center to recruit and retain clinical professionals and compete with private sector salaries to attract top talent. We're using this to hire additional primary care and mental health providers to expand our capacity at the ambulatory care center. Additionally, I'm really excited to share this. We've been approved to open a VA-leased CBOC in Banning, California. This will not be a contracted clinic, but one that is VA operated with VA staff providing the care. This is our ultimate goal. Our goal is to open the Banning Clinic in 2023 so that we can provide more options to veterans to receive their care. There are a lot of changes on the horizon, and we thank you for your patience as we work to collaborate with our partners to provide you the care that you need. We're here for veterans, and veterans are at the center of everything we do. In our commitment to you, VA Loma Linda will host a Veterans Healthcare Information Session in November to ensure that you are aware of changes to policies, processes, and services. We'll announce this through social media, email distribution, news releases, the Loma Linda VA website, and other venues. We hope that you connect with us to ensure you get the latest information. Additionally, our team regularly updates our congressional offices to include Congressman Ruiz's office to guarantee the widest dissemination of information to veterans. To underscore Secretary McDonough's comment, I just want to encourage you to register today, and you can begin today online at va.gov/PACT, where you can submit a claim with the Veterans Benefits Administration or enroll for VA healthcare. I just want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to serve you, and I'm happy to stay on to answer any questions that you may have for me.
Thank you, Karandeep. And Also, we'll be helping you, letting our community know about the November information session that you will host. Also, thank you for our work together on the banning CBOC in 2023. I know that was one of several. We'll follow up on the others that we were been discussing for a couple of years now. I know that is very welcome news for our veterans in the San Gorgonio Pass and high desert area as well. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you for staying to answer some questions. So now, to help us close things out, I now invite Bill Young from the Veterans Easy Access Program back up to the podium to say a few words. Over the years, Bill has been an incredible advisor and friend. He's a very strong member of my Veterans Advisory Board, and who has helped local veterans stay informed about important news and events in the community. He's very instrumental in mobilizing local veterans, participates in many events, and is a leader in the veteran community. So Bill is here. He opened our program with the Pledge of Allegiance. Bill, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Congressman. Burn pits is a huge victory for veterans. No one can deny that. But there are also many other areas that veterans need help in and need to be kept aware of. Things from education to jobs to even medical and legal issues. In the past, the Veterans Easy Access Program, or VEAP, has held an annual Veterans Expo from 2010 to 2019. We had 9 of those expos. Burn pits was even represented at several of those expos. We had up to 1,500 attendees in 2019, so it was a huge success. Unfortunately, the last 2.5 years, we've not been able to have a Veterans Expo. On October 8th of this year, we are planning to have the 10th annual Veterans Expo. It will be held on a smaller scale. It will be held at the Cathedral City Core of the Salvation Army, located at 30-400 Landau Boulevard. And it'll be right next to the brand new Veterans Village, which is opening the latter part of this summer. And on a limited basis, will be open at the time of our expo. We are planning to have the event from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. It starts with a huge flag raising ceremony. Then we honor 2 local veterans. One actually is from Loma Linda VA Hospital, the lady who is the head of the Women's Veterans Program. And the other is a World War II veteran, an aviator. He was the youngest pilot at the end of World War II, and he actually flew into the beginning of Vietnam. There will be 34 plus exhibitors. There may even be room for 1 or 2 more, so I would recommend that a couple of the individuals that are on our Zoom today, if they could get paperwork in shortly, we'd love to have them also participate. There's also going to be a free hot lunch, and the interesting part about this is it's a graduate of the Coachella Valley Rescue Mission who went through their program and then went to culinary school, and she will be preparing a hot meal for the group. So it's a case of someone giving back to the community also. There's a display that we call the Gallery of Heroes. There's 160 plus veterans. It's a slideshow that shows veterans from this area and beyond, and shows that veterans come in all sizes, shapes, ages, and have supported wars way back from the beginning of time. And finally, there will be tours of the Veterans Village, so it's an opportunity to see this great new facility. Once again, it's on October 8th, from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. One last comment, we do a monthly email newsletter called the Readback. It's a great way to keep up on all of the programs and all of the events in the local area for veterans. If you do not get it, please contact me and I'll get you on a distribution. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Bill. So we're going to lead into the question and answer session. But before we do that, I just got to say what an honor to have you all and all of our wonderful presenters with us today. Thank you so much. And can I just say what an awesome job everyone did today? Thank you so much. Thank you. And you all on screen can't see this, but everybody working the text and the cameras right now are just like, we're almost there. So each and every one of our panelists today truly showed us what Veterans University is all about. And I really do mean it when I say that Veterans University holds a special place in my heart. And it's a special place because of each one of you. Together at Veterans University, we've helped bring financial stability to veterans and their families about to lose their homes because they could barely afford a loved one's medical bills. We've helped keep a family together by providing resources for a veteran struggling with PTSD, for example. And I'll remember this case. The wife brought her husband in, young veteran who was staying in his room days in and days out, suffering from PTSD. And she thought this would be a good place where he could connect with other veterans. And sure enough, at one of our in-person veteran sessions, there was different organizations that got him into treatment, to therapy, and created a community for him to thrive. And now we're helping veterans get connected with critical resources to get the healthcare they need from the VA. So by being here today, you are part of something special, something that's life-changing. So whether you're here as a veteran to learn more about the PACT Act or a family member to help a loved one enroll in benefits and healthcare, or maybe a healthcare provider to learn how you can recognize the signs and symptoms of toxic exposure, you are a part of a movement and a mission to empower our veterans, and you are making a difference. And together we'll leave today more knowledgeable about how we can serve our community's veterans. Now that you know more about the PACT Act law at work or in the community, at your place of worship, or in the community at your kids' soccer or baseball game, you can talk to other members in the community. And if you know veterans, you can ask them if they know about the PACT Act law, and if they were exposed to radiation, to burn pits, or if they served in one of the 5 countries that Agent Orange exposed Vietnam veterans are now eligible for. You can initiate that conversation and refer them to a veteran service organization, to Riverside County Veteran Service Officers, to the Loma Linda VA, or any VA or CBOC that serves those veterans in their community throughout the entire nation. So to all of our veterans and your families, thank you again for your incredible service. So with that, let's get into the Q&A. So we will try to get to as many questions as we can, but if we run out of time, you can call my office at 760-424-8888, and the member of my team will assist you. So we'll first start off with a few frequently asked questions that we collected before this session. We synthesized them together and we prepared them for the presenters and the panelists here. So the first question is, if a veteran passed away due to presumptive diseases in the PACT Act, but did not receive a disability rating for that disease before the law was passed, will the spouse be entitled to survivor's benefits? Again, if a veteran passed away due to presumptive diseases in the PACT Act, but did not receive a disability rating for that disease before the law was passed, will the spouse still be entitled to survivor's benefit? I would like to ask Gary Woodward from the House Veterans Affairs Committee to please answer that question. Gary?
Thank you, Congressman. The short answer is yes. Spouses, survivors are eligible for dependency and indemnity compensation based on the presumptions established in this bill. They would still need to go through the normal application process at VA, and Ms. Cruz-Young might be able to articulate on that. But yes, the bill does make those benefits available to survivors.
Excellent, thank you. So the second question is for Karandeep Sraon, the director of VA Loma Linda. Will the VA, this was a specific question, several veterans had about Loma Linda's VA. will the VA have to run the veteran through all the allergy medications, then to the ERT department before a diagnosis is presumed?
No, the presumptive condition doesn't require verification to my understanding. The toxic screening will begin on November 8th. We are actually training all of our providers beginning in October, so that when the screening does begin, there will be an initial 5-minute screening for all veterans, and then every 5 years. As more information comes out, we'll be sure to share that with folks, and at our November information session, we'll be sure to have additional information regarding that.
Great, and I'd like to have Ramonita Young answer this next question. If you want to come up, I'll ask the question and you can answer from here. Will processing time be the same as any other disability claim? So, for example, military sexual trauma has to go through a different routing process than normal claims. Would burn pits disabilities have to do this as well? Is there another type of processing criteria for burn pits, like the military sexual trauma has to go through?
So to answer the question, Congressman, everything I've read regarding the PACT Act and the processing of the claims, there is no difference. So the claims process will be routed as a normal claim. If Gary has any other information to give on that, I have not read anything saying that it's not going to be a different process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Congressman, happy to jump in if you'd like.
please.
I will just say, the issue is one of routing. They do concentrate claims for certain issues in certain locations. They haven't made that decision with respect to PACT Act and burn pits claims yet. I think this is one of the reasons why they're asking folks to apply now, so they can get a sense of the scope of the universe of claims that are going to need to be processed and make decisions about how best to allocate those to the people who are reviewing them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Gary, stay on because this question is directed to you as well. What is the wait time before the law takes effect? As we heard the Secretary say, the President made some executive changes to expedite these. So the VA has stated that will be as early as January 2023, but no later than that. So again, the question is, what is the wait time before the law takes effect?
Yeah, sure. The answer depends on the provision. As I said, the location and service date based access to healthcare phases in over the next 10 years. And again, these are for veterans who are not ill currently. And so they have access to the testing at Loma Linda and other places to catch these illnesses early. But that phases in over the next 10 years based on when your separation date is. The new presumptive illnesses and categories of conditions, their effective date is August 10th, 2022. VA will not process the claims that are filed between August and January until after that January date. But once that claim is granted, assuming that it is granted, the disability compensation will be retroactive to August 10th.
Thank you. Now we have a question from Scott Kiran from Palm Desert. Will this law help vets exposed to radiation receive help from the VA? So will this law help vets exposed to radiation receive help from the VA? Karandeep, from the director, medical director for VA Loma Linda, can you answer that, please?
Yes, happy to. Yeah, we're very excited that the expanded eligibility for many of these conditions will allow veterans to receive VA healthcare. I would encourage you to visit VA.gov/PACT to go ahead and begin that process.
Thank you so much. The next question is for Gary. This is from Richard Valdez, Highland. He resides in Highland, California. For those who filed a claim on August 11, 2022 for Agent Orange for compensation purposes, will this be effective date or is October 1st the effective date? Again, for those who filed a claim on August 11, 2022 for Agent Orange for compensation purposes, will this be the effective date or is October 1st the effective date? Gary?
Sure. So this gets a little tricky, and I'll try to do my best to explain this. So underpinning all of this is the normal VA disability and healthcare claims process, right? Veterans have at any time been able to petition the VA for a service connection for an illness that they've succumbed to or experiencing. The problem has been that the burden of proof has been extraordinarily high, particularly for these illnesses related to burn pits. And certainly with respect to Agent Orange and hypertension, especially as Vietnam veterans are of the population age where this would start to sort of manifest in increased rates anyway, that burden of proof that any hypertension claim is connected to exposure is really, really difficult. And so a claim filed prior to the effective date listed for hypertension in PACT Act would be sort of adjudicated based on the normal process that the VA already has in place for that illness. And as of now, most of those claims generally are denied. Now, VA would have, I guess, one of two choices what to do with this existing claim related to hypertension. One is to just sit on it for 4 years until the presumption kicks in, or the second would be to deny it and then ask the veteran to file a supplemental claim once the presumption kicks in 2026 with the lowered burden of proof. And in that case, in the case that they would sit on it, the effective date would be the effective date of the presumption, not the filing date.
Thank you, Gary. This is the last question. It's also directed to you. This is a question from James Moore. James Moore from San Jacinto. My father served during the Korean and Vietnam Wars. He passed away from cancer at the age of 42. His claim was denied, and my mother raised us on our own. What can I do to assist a widow? Again, my father served during the Korean and Vietnam Wars. He passed away from cancer at a young age of 42. His claim was denied, and my mother raised us on our own. What can I do to assist a widow? Gary?
So again, already existing at VA and certainly expanded through the presumptions and access created by the PACT Act, there is available to survivors dependency and indemnity compensation and some other benefits for spouses and surviving children of veterans. So I would encourage this person to reach out to Ms. Cruz-Young's organization, reach out to one of the other VSOs, American Legion, VFW, whoever, and see how they can go about filing a claim for their mother to receive the DIC, as we call it, because it is a benefit that is available and has been for some time, and is now expanded eligibility based on PACT Act.
Thank you, Gary. That's the last of our questions. If there's still other questions that we didn't get to, we'll collect them. We'll try to get back to you as well. If you have further questions, you have heard from leaders at the Loma Linda VA Medical Center, Riverside County, veteran service officers, and national veteran service organizations. You can call them, you can call my office, 760-424-8888. We can direct you to the right person to answer them, and we can help you, connect you to the resources and benefits that you have earned, need, and deserve. So know that this invitation goes beyond just the honoring our PACT Act and burn pits, Agent Orange, radiation exposure, and Camp Lejeune issues that are addressed in the honoring our PACT Act law. This can go to any scenario that you need some assistance with. And I can't promise you you'll get the result that you want. We're most of the time successful, but I can promise you that we'll be at your side to fight for you. Veterans University is only a one-day event, but our advocacy for local veterans is daily, and it doesn't end here. This is a year-round effort to ensure all our veterans, every single one, and their family members gets the health care and benefits they have earned and deserve. So please remember, if you or a loved one has questions that we didn't get to today, you can give my office a call at 760-424-8888. Also, you can go on to my Facebook page, just search Congressman Raul Ruiz /MD. There will be the clipping of this posting. You can share it, you can forward it to your friends. You can clip it, you can use it to really educate and spread the word on this special edition of Veterans University that focused on the honoring our PACT Act law. Also, this information and these PDFs and resource center for people exposed to burn pits and other toxins will be on my website. So for more information about the honoring our PACT Act law, visit ruiz.house.gov/PACT, PACT, ruiz.house.gov/PACT, PACT. There you can find resources and a copy of today's PowerPoint presentation. So with that, I want to thank everybody for attending. Thank you for all the veterans who never give up, never give in. You double down to help other veterans. You've been a great source of inspiration for me. And this is what Veterans University is about. It's about connecting veterans with resources, empowering, building capacity, building knowledge, building training. It's like training the trainers, and also anybody who wants to pragmatically help a veteran beyond words and colors, to pragmatically do something, to have a skill, to refer veterans, to improve the lives of our veterans and their families here in our community and across our nation. So with that, thank you for participating in this year's special edition of Veterans University, focusing on the honoring our PACT Act law.